Perfect. Thanks, Peter. Fantastic per presents, per interesse, per pismoria. Now we'll switch in English. This panel today is a special interest that we were looking for during these last weeks while we were discussing about the participation and contribution and partnership within the Kosovo City Festival. With our great pleasure today, we would like to invite our Minister of Economy, Ms. Artane Rizvanolli, as part of our panel today. Welcome. And also we have our two partners that will be online. They couldn't make travel to Prishtina these days. It's our colleague, Ms. Vesna Prodnik from Vaffer, Ljubljana, Slovenia. Welcome, Vesna. And the second partner of ours is also Ms. Katja from Digital Innovation Hub Slovenia that will be part of our panel today. So once again, welcome, dear Minister. Welcome, Vesna and Katja. The subject that we would like to discuss together with you and share with you is mainly focused on the Digital Agenda 2030 of Kosovo, a project which is now being supported by Ministry of Economy and CODE project financed by World Bank in the terms of supporting the society and economy towards the digital transformation and, of course, fulfilling our ambitions towards EU Digital Agenda 2030, as they now already call it EU Digital Decade 2030. The Ministry of Economy is the leading partner in terms of digitalization and digital economy and digitalization of the society. And this digital transformation process is quite well now adapted in terms of policy level, business level, and society level. Kosovo City is another platform that we want to share all these disseminating information, endeavors, activities, and partnership that the project currently is developing and supporting in the terms of synchronization. We would now kindly ask Minister Rizvanolli about the key orientation the ministry is developing, is keeping and bringing new spirit towards the digital agenda and digital transformation of the society.
Thank you very much, Ahmet. It's a special pleasure for me to be here today among you all. I have to say, among the sectors that are under the mandate of the ministry, which I lead, Ministry of Economy, we have quite a few problematic sectors, such as the energy sector, the mining sector, monitoring of publicly owned enterprises, and the ICT sector is, for a change, a sector that is booming, a sector that is vibrant with youth, a lot of startups, and perhaps the only sector where we have a positive trade balance. So it's a great pleasure to be here and to work on the ICT sector and to be able to work maybe compared to some other sectors, not only in our ministry, but also in government in general, instead of focusing so much energy on solving the problems of the past and the legacies and the challenges of the past, to actually think exclusively about the way forward and to be among people like you. So it's a great pleasure for me to be here today. I was asked in the Digital Summit in Podgorica a few weeks ago by one of the participants whether digitalization is a priority for our government. And I paused for a second and I thought, well, I think no country can afford not to have digitalization as a priority in this day and age. One of the statistics that is puzzling economists, if you're an economist, though I don't expect many of you are in this room, but if you're an economist like me, you know that one of the puzzling statistics and phenomena in economic research recently has been that productivity of the workforce has not been increasing. It has been stagnating over the last decade or more, despite the digitalization that we've had and despite the development of the ICT sector. And actually, one of the reasons for this, this has been puzzling economists for a while now, and now it's thought that one of the reasons for this, at least, is that actually 70% of the investment in the ICT sector, in ICT, is actually focused in the ICT sector. However, only 30% of investment in ICT is outside of the ICT sector. So what that means that while the ICT sector is developing, actually the spillovers into traditional sectors are not catching up in terms of ICT development. This also means that there is a lot of room for improvement and a lot of room for traditional industries to improve their productivity and efficiency and profitability, of course, and international competitiveness by digitalization. And this is, of course, something that we need to address, not only for the sake of the digital sector and people like you, but for the sake of our economy. And I'm not going to repeat the assets that we as a country have in this respect, in terms of youth, in terms of people like you, young men and women, and I'm happy to say women also, greatly represented in the sector today in Kosovo, for which I am proud. And it's something that we as a government take very seriously. I'm going to share with you some figures. I don't want to talk about figures and budgets, but one question that usually comes is, well, do you put your money where your mouth is? And I'm just going to share some figures with you, some decisions and budget figures from this government, which show that we are taking ICT seriously and which show that there will be a bright future for this sector if we continue to work together. In the package for economic recovery, which we have adopted more than a month ago in government, we have allocated 5 million euros for IT training vouchers and support for employment for 3 months for youth, for young men and women. I encourage you all, all of youth who are watching us, to apply for this scheme, as well as 7 million euros for grant support for SMEs for digitalization and innovation, and 3 million euros for the ITP park here in Prizren, with a further 9 million euros for buying textbooks for higher education, and which includes also 1 million euros to support girls, scholarships for girls in STEM. But to move on to actual activities and where we are and where we are going, I will start by saying that as a country we can be, and as Ministry of Economy that actually has worked a lot on this over the past years with the support of World Bank Project Code among others, we can proudly say that we have full coverage with broadband internet. All villages are now covered, and including the work that has been done recently by the Department of ICT and led by Mr. Agim Kukay in our ministry with grant support, grant matching scheme, which leveraged private investment into areas where it was not profitable for private investors to invest. Now all villages in Kosovo are covered with broadband, fiber-to-home technology, with some of them actually that have been covered through this, through our recent work, actually have better connections than I do in the middle of Prishtina. Broadband penetration is something that we take for granted, however, and it's it's something that we should appreciate. And just recently in Podgorica, I was reminded that in other neighboring countries, it's actually much lower, and we should also think about the achievements and the positive sides rather than, for us as policymakers anyway, always focusing on the problems and what is to address next. And speaking of what needs to be addressed next, one of our priorities as a ministry, but also for the regulator, and this is something that we have been exchanging on recently, is developing the infrastructure on the one hand by the ministry, and then the regulatory framework for 5G networks. And of course, and accelerating, we are actually planning to accelerate the timeline for introducing 5G technology. And we hope that this will be one of the areas that we as a country, like in broadband connectivity, can continue to be leaders in the region. And this can be one of our advantages, one of our selling points for foreign investors that want to invest here in the region in the future. As we know, so far Kosovo has managed to attract relatively little of the FDI that goes into the region for various reasons for which we are aware. Improving cybersecurity, data security is of course something that, as the panelists were also discussing earlier this morning, is something that needs to come alongside with this development, be it digitalization of public services, or be it digitalization of services and commerce in the private sector. This is something that we should take very seriously, along with, and primarily for us as a ministry, what is important, protecting critical infrastructure, such as energy infrastructure. Right now, our grid is, and our system is quite traditional. However, this is changing, and this is changing fast. And as we move towards more digitalized equipment, as we move towards smart meters, smart grids, ensuring the safety and security of this infrastructure is going to be key, not only, of course, for the energy sector and the ICT sector, but for the whole economy. Infrastructure without the digital skills and competencies, of course, means nothing. We are very well aware that this is the primary complaint of private businesses. Every business, as well as association, reminds me this every time I meet them. We have a shortage of skilled professionals for various reasons, I would say. Here, the government and the private sector have a lot to do. Improving the education system, starting from primary and pre-primary education, is going to be the only way to fix this in the long term, of course. It's going to be the basis for fixing this, as well as skill shortages in all other sectors that we see. However, this is not sufficient, but also in the short term, we should be thinking about training. And actually one of the areas in which our ministry has been working in recent years is providing training for youth, young men and women, ensuring participation of women of at least 50% in specialized trainings such as artificial intelligence, web development, etc. However, also in basic digital skills for wider youth. A total of 3,500 young men and women will or have been or will be trained in these programs over this year and next year. And of course, there is the scheme which I mentioned earlier through the economic recovery package, and I urge all unemployed but not only unemployed, youth who are who want to start a career in ICT to apply for this scheme. In terms of digitalizing services, not only in the public but also in the private sector, ADAS regulation is, of course, one precondition. And this is an ADAS law that transposes this regulation, has been approved by government and should be, is expected to be approved by our parliament very soon, which will create the opportunities for developing the electronic ID system, for which we have already secured funding, but also paves the way for digitalization of public services, including health, education, and public utilities and all other areas, but also allows companies and the financial sector, which is one of the greatest beneficiaries and actually have been requesting this, that we approve this law as soon as possible since our day one in government. And this will be, of course, a precondition, but not sufficient to achieve these. We have had already good examples of how digitalization can make our lives easier. If you think about services that government provides or other public institutions, I would say, for instance, that those of us who are vaccinated, which are now almost 50% of the population, actually have achieved this in a very efficient and a very safe way in large due to digitalization. The whole process was very smooth. We have managed to come from 0 in June. We were the latest country in Europe to start vaccination, but now we are one of the top countries in southeastern Europe in terms of the share of population vaccinated. And I think this is something that we can be proud of. And this is one of the examples where digitalization has made a huge effect, positive effect on our lives. If you've paid taxes to tax administration, if you do that on your own, if you're self-employed or you have a business, you know that the process is digitalized, which makes it much easier than spending a day and exposing yourself to the virus by going there. However, we have a lot to do, and provision of services online, public services online, is just one aspect. And the other aspect, which is behind the scenes, what is the back end of public policy, which the citizens don't see, is the ability, is how digital platforms and services